All right. Good evening, everyone.
No, it's mine. No, it's mine.
All right. The time is 5:32 p.m. It's Tuesday, March 19th. I'm going to call this special city council meeting to order. Would the city secretary please call a roll?
Mitchell,
Here.
Rizzo,
Present.
Heiser, Zuniga, Harris,
Here.
Parsley,
Here.
Tobias.
Present.
All right. 5 members present. We have a quorum. Next up, citizen comments. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. It's now closed. Next up, executive session. City Council will now go into executive session to discuss items 1A through I pursuant to Texas Government Code sections 551.071, 551.072, and 551.087. Thank you. p.m. It is Tuesday, March the 19th, and I'm going to call this regularly scheduled City Council meeting to order. Would all please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The city secretary, please call the roll.
Mitchell,
Here.
Rizzo,
Present.
Heiser,
Here.
Zuniga,
Present.
Harris,
Here.
Parsley,
Here.
Tobias.
Present.
Okay, all members are present. We have a quorum. Next up is approval of the minutes.
Mayor, I'd like to go make a motion to approve the minutes for the special meeting on March the 7th, 2024, and the regular meeting for the same date, March 7th, 2024.
Second.
All right, the motion has been made by Councilmember Tobias, seconded by Councilmember Harris, that we approve the minutes. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Next up is citizen comments period. At this time, we ask anyone in the audience who wishes to come forward and speak on anything, any item, to please do so. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes and that you direct those comments to the mayor and council. We also ask that you fill out a citizen comments form and submit that to either myself or the city secretary. I have a few folks registered to speak. First up is Joan Fox. Yes.
Thank you. Last week in the paper, I read the article about the approval for the Pride themed Market Day, and I was really excited when I first saw the headline, but then as I read the article, I got a little bit dismayed by the talk about around it and the concerns about it. So I just want to say that I chose to come to Kyle because it has an openly welcoming focus to all. And I felt like this would be a place where every citizen of Kyle is welcome to come to any event. I've been to lots of events here, and I've always felt very safe. I've never felt like there was anybody overtaking the community or things like that. The article that I read had a lot of biblical references, and I know that I personally believe in the Bible, but I know we can use it as a brick or a salve. Not everyone shares the same faith systems that we all do, so we can't really pick one faith system to use to determine what we're going to do in our community. We have to abide by liberty and justice for all. So Kyle is a great city. I don't think any of us want Kyle to have the reputation of a city that hates gays or shuns gays. But when you start to legislate against a certain group, no matter what group that is, that's the beginning of hate. And we don't want to go there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is Stephanie McDonald.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here to speak on item 22, which is calling for a gas stipend of $300 per member, council member, and mayor, and the insurance that full-time employees benefit from. There is already an expense stipend for $500 for each member. And I'm asking that you consider not doing that, keeping it with an expense reimbursement. That would total $2,100 a month, and I would be very surprised if that's what the expenses are. I ask that you would, I think it's a raise in disguise, which goes against the city charter. There already has been given a raise, and it's not due, you're not due to ask for another one for 3 years after the first one. Also on the insurance, you're asking for a benefit that other part-time employees do not have. Right now, you can get on the city insurance, but it's at your own expense. And so that would be not to exceed $133,000 a year for that expense. Kyle has got a lot of dire needs, and I think that money could be used toward that. Like our roads and our water. I mean, we have so many issues that are dire. We added, I'm also asking that you consider changing the amended stage 3 restrictions if you can't bump it up to a little more, to change it from the wrong watering time of day, which is 7 to 10 p.m. when the ground is just about at its hottest, to 7 to 10 a.m. Makes a lot more sense. And if you could change the time, and if possible, the stage, right now it's planting time, that would be helpful. We gave the rights to our city water to Anthem and Six Creeks that are both not within the city limits, and now we are having an emergency, a water emergency. So if we could please, I'd like you to consider all those things, and if possible, if you could move agenda item 22 up to the top of the discussion, I would appreciate it. Oh my God, okay, 43 seconds left? Okay. The other thing was, I'm not asking for a total moratorium on building, but I would love to see our building managed more if we don't have water or the roads to support our city, and we just keep continuing, and it's getting worse than when we moved here 8 years ago. So that's all I'd like to ask you to consider. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is Domingo Castillo.
Mayor, City Council persons, my name is Domingo Castilleja, and my concern is in respect to item 22, where the City Council have access to health insurance, and as ordinance reads, you can have access to that health insurance as long as you pay the premium, and I believe that's the way it should stay. The city should not be burdened with that responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Yvonne Flores-Kale.
Good afternoon, members of council. There is evidence that 3 is a magic number of times for a message to be effective for a listener. Today marks the second time I have come before each of you to encourage you to think about your roles as elected officials. I must caution, however, as more than 3 times will trigger skepticism. The purpose of being an elected politician should be to work towards the betterment of society. A political servant should always prioritize the needs and interests of the public over his or her personal gain, while listening to and encouraging feedback from those who he or she represents. Hopefully all with a happy heart. What political servants are not are city employees. Not even a little bit, not even kind of. They are not above their own laws or constituents, and they should never receive benefits not offered to every member of staff, part-time or full-time. According to the city's charter, the city council by ordinance shall provide a method for determining what expenses are reimbursable and what requirements must be met to receive reimbursement. If gas has been deemed reimbursable by city ordinance, the charter clearly states there must be requirements met in order to receive such reimbursement. Allowing reimbursements without documentation would regress the city back to the same problematic situation experienced in 2021, where significant charges were incurred on an elected official's credit card without adequate documentation, resulting in nearly $10,000 in losses for the taxpayers. Attempting to circumvent the city's charter to increase council compensation does not make you smart. It makes you a thief among thieves, for which there could be no honor. I stand before each of you today the same way I stood in front of the council in 2019. I stood here before winning an election and after I lost. I will continue to stand here to voice my concerns about this city and the lack of consideration from its leadership to our residents. I show up because I care about Kyle. I care about the people in this city and about the city's future. I will continue to stand here and hold each of you accountable until your words and promises made during your campaigns match your actions. The quicker you handle your responsibilities, the sooner you can stop hearing from me. I would also like to request agenda item number 22 be moved up to the top of the agenda, please.
All right, next up, Don Conley.
Hello, Mayor and Councilman. My name is Dawn Conley, and I'm a Kyle resident living at Lakeside Crossing Manufacturer Homes of Roberts Community. I've come tonight to speak about Agenda 22. For the presentation coming forward, it mentions that having a $300 stipend are for the purposes of efficiency and free up administrative time. I'm confused. As a former HR manager and payroll staff for a hospice company, I was in charge of mileage and reimbursements. I handled over 25 employees and their reimbursements. It took me less than one shift to handle and approve or disapprove the reimbursements. My employees took their time in filling out the proper paperwork, which allowed me to efficiently, and yes, I found many discrepancies to approve or deny their mileage. So I was not just stamping approval. A stipend is just a lazy way to handle mileage, and all accountability is removed. There are 7 on council. Administrative can take and be given time to hold the council accountable for their mileage. And I expect the council to be transparent in how they spend our money. As for health insurance, you have the ability to have access. You're not part-time employees or full-time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please move it up.
All right, next up, Betty Conley.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Betty Conley, and I live at 87 Eagle Creek, and I'm off of Dacey Road in the Lakeside community. I'm here to request street lights. It is very dark with Kensington subdivision, Communicare, which a lot of people use. We have the school, the health science school there. Kids have to cross that street to get to the sidewalks to get to the school. It's very dark in the morning, depending what time, daytime savings and stuff, and even in the evening. We just several weeks ago, maybe a month ago, had one of our gentlemen riding his bike. It was dusk, and he was hit by a car. You cannot see at those entrances and crossing because there are no street lights. You just have a little sign that says Lakeside, but other than that, there are no street lights. Going into Lakeside has a medium, and half of the people go in the wrong side. There's no light. They just see the opening. So I'm here to request that you look and study for Dacey Lane, where Lakeside is, where the Communicare is, where Kensington, which all are together, and get us some proper lighting. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up is Eileen Escalante.
Hello, members of the council. My name is Eileen Escalante, and I'm calling to speak about item number 22. I think, I object to a $300 stipend. It's just normal bookkeeping practices. If you have an expense, show a receipt. Period. End of story. It's done everywhere. So I don't know why we would just be fishing out $300 for no accounting or bookkeeping to back it up. Also, I object to the insurance. You are part-time employees, you are servants, and it's just not necessary. And so I just don't think it's a good use of city money. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. That is all the citizen comments forms that I have in front of me. Is there anyone else who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close citizen comments. Citizen comments is now closed. Next up is agenda order. Does anybody have any requests to move any items forward?
22.
All right. Y'all want to get after it?
Yep.
All right, next up is agenda item number 22, first reading. Consider approval of an ordinance amending the city's adopted budget for fiscal year 23-24 to authorize mayor and city council members to access the health insurance program on the same terms as full-time city employees and to reallocate funds currently available for mileage reimbursement for the mayor and city council members to create a mileage stipend for the mayor and each city council member in the amount of $300 per month to cover the cost of using a personal vehicle for city business and amending ordinance 1043 regarding city council health insurance process. Mr. Elizondo.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item was a council requested item to staff to do a study on city council compensation, specifically the mileage stipend and the insurance. So for anyone watching that doesn't know our current council compensation, we have a salary of $1,000 per month for council members, $1,300 per month for the mayor, an expense stipend of $500 per month, and then line items in the budget provided for other expenses. The council does have access to city health insurance, but it is at the full cost deducted from their monthly salary. The two things we're talking about, the mileage stipend and the health insurance. The mileage stipend for purposes of efficiency, the current mileage stipend reimbursement line item could be reallocated to create a $300 per month stipend for the mayor and council. Amendment is budget neutral, so the cost would just be a switch over, but it would cover reasonable costs related to the use of personal vehicles for city council business. There is city council's time in filling out the mileage, the paperwork can be a little bit tedious, and then also there is staff and administrative time that is associated with that as well. When it comes to access to city health insurance, we have a current ordinance of 1043 that gives the ability to access city health insurance, but like I said, it's required at full cost for the council members. State law does allow council members to be on the same health insurance as employees are for the city, and so council may choose to amend the ordinance of 1043 and the budget to allow access to the city's health insurance program on the same terms as employees. So the options tonight are to approve the ordinance as drafted with both the mileage stipend and the access to health insurance at the same terms as employees. Council can amend the ordinance to approve some of those changes and adjust the health insurance or the mileage stipend, or deny the ordinance altogether.
All right, thank you, Mr. Elizondo. Appreciate the overview. I'll start with just a brief history of council compensation, if y'all would like, and then we can have a couple comments and see where we go from there. I appreciate the feedback. I will tell you, this is probably the 20th time I've had a conversation about council compensation from this chair. So I'm very accustomed to having it, and in every case, there's been about this same number of folks that have come and spoken out against it. So I understand that it's a complicated issue. I also understand that folks feel a certain way about allowing for council members to receive benefits from the city. And obviously the argument can be made, as has been made here and many times in the past, that council members should not be compensated at all. And should not be able to have health insurance and should treat it as a part-time job. And the expectation would be, generally speaking, that council members need to have their own full-time employment in order to be able to make something like serving on the city council functionable. I've served now with 21 council members over the last 8 years. I would say that probably half of them fell on one side of the camp, where they had full-time employment elsewhere in a career, and as such, they sort of thought of their job in a specific way, and they engaged in a specific way based on, I work elsewhere, I show up every other Tuesday, I study for the agenda, that's the majority of my role. I've also served with about the other half of the council, where they really put in a lot of effort, and it probably impacted them financially. There's a lot of stress on the job of being a council member. This is very difficult to try to explain to folks that what it even is to be a council member and how much time and energy is required. I've always felt that council members should be paid in such a way that the amount of compensation that comes to them is never so much that they would run for city council so that they could be compensated for the money or for the benefits. I've also felt that council members should never be paid so little that the average resident is prevented from running for council because the sacrifice required to do the job right causes them to struggle to maintain full-time employment. And at the center of that is health insurance and that particular benefit, because it's hard to maintain full-time employment with benefits if you are a mayor or a council member. I would say that of the 21 council members I've served with, probably half of them spend 20 to 30 hours a week on their jobs. The mayor spends more. It's almost impossible for a mayor in particular to have full-time employment elsewhere and to treat the job and the demands that are on the city of Kyle with the type of interest that is really required in time and energy and focus. The mayor before me was an attorney who had his own practice. He was able to do that job and the mayor, but his practice was really struggled as a result. The mayor before him was, a part of a family that allowed for her to be able to work without concerning herself with money. So as I've said many times, I've voted on insurance twice. I'm 0 for 2. So there's nothing new. If anybody is feeling like I'm saying something new, most of my colleagues have heard me talk about this in the past. I understand the argument that council members shouldn't be allowed to take full coverage insurance because they don't work full time. It's compelling. The problem, though, is that council members, the job of being a council member is not a traditional part-time job. It's oftentimes where you are required to have a breakfast with the constituent or a lunch with the constituent or an afternoon meeting with the county commissioner or driving up to the legislature, answering emails, answering phone calls, meeting with staff, meeting with colleagues, meeting with other jurisdictions. It is all over the place. It's morning, noon, and night. And yes, it's not every minute of every day, but it's a lot. And I think about it, and have always thought about it from the perspective of what do we want from our city council members. And I think that's where the divide is, because I think some folks, and I know most of y'all by name that came and spoke, but I think some folks have a mentality that council members should not be compensated and that they should really put the position over here, or if you're not independently wealthy or retired or have extremely flexible hours, maybe you just shouldn't consider running. The problem with that is the majority of the residents in our city don't fit those categories, but it disproportionately affects those types of people. And so I believe that insurance should be something that we provide our council members. I think the stipend, the $300, really does come down to staff has been having a hard time processing some of those, and the mileage reimbursements in particular are cumbersome. So there was discussion. It's brought forward. I have no idea how the vote will go, but it's just always been my opinion that, in particular on the insurance, that'd be something that we should do. And the idea of having us pay 100%, as an example, I did it when we made that rule. The first year I tried to take that insurance, and the cost of the insurance was more than the pay. So to be the mayor of the city of Kyle, I had to write a check to the city every month for a year. So my point is, reasonable people can view it differently. And I've talked to hundreds of people with regards to compensation, not just the ones who talk to folks and come here and speak, hundreds of folks. And the majority of them, overwhelming majority of them, are shocked when they find out that the mayor of Kyle, who has an incredible, stressful job and a lot of demands, only makes $1,300 a month and is not allowed to have insurance. I understand that folks can be upset with that, but it is a significant burden to try to do that. And I've carried that burden through the years, and I have seen council members carry that burden with honor. And if they, aren't being able to take insurance from the city, they don't quit. They keep moving forward. But it's suffering, and it's not easy for folks to participate in that way. Some folks can do it. I think it should be made available to all, that we should try to cast the widest net to allow for the folks who have to. We were talking about in an executive session just a few minutes ago, how much is coming before us as a city council this year. Really important decisions that we need to make. And if you can be the kind of person that just shows up at the meetings and provides your up and down vote, which is a critical part. But there are lots of other opportunities to engage, to try to make the community better. But it's difficult to do that with a full-time job. And I've seen it with 21 council members. So it's not something that I think, it's something that I know in my bones. So that's just where I've stood. I've stood there for a long time. So I support, in particular, the insurance initiative. But that's just my opinion on it. And so I will yield the floor. Does anybody have any additional comments? Councilmember Parsley.
Thank you, Mayor. So it really wasn't until I became a council member that I realized the time and effort that it takes to do the job right. We love it. I don't think any of us decided to run for council because of the compensation or the benefits that come with it, because we don't get any other benefit other than that we are making decisions and we're trying to shape the city in a way that we feel proud of, at the end of our term. In August 2022, we selected the compensation committee, and they determined that the council salary should have remained the same. However, after that determination, we had a couple of members of that committee that made a suggestion for council to get a stipend of $500, which we took. However, the health insurance has been available. It's just to the full cost to the council members. This might be an unpopular opinion again, for the residents, but ever since the moment I got elected, I have seen the time and effort that the mayor puts for the city of Kyle. I am very well aware that he spends more than 40 hours per week, and it is a surprise to me that you have not gotten insurance or being compensated the way that you should. This is not because I'm gonna run for mayor and I'm saying this at some point. This is just because I have seen and learned so much from you that I feel like it is really crazy that you have not been compensated the way that you should, or have at least health insurance moving 24/7, doing things for the city of Kyle. But I cannot say the same about the rest of the council, because most of us have full-time jobs, and then what we dedicate to the city, I will say probably between answering emails or meeting with residents or doing visits or meeting with staff, can take, I don't know, it's probably different for each one of us. Like it may take 15, 20 hours for me per week, but it may take Tobias 25, or it may take Suniga 30, I don't know. Number one, for the stipend, I think we are trying to go around the charter, and I'm not okay with that. I think we should wait until August 2025 to select a new committee that they can determine if council should have a stipend or a change in the salary. My suggestion would be, since there is a certain amount of time that council puts into the city, that maybe there is a 50% price discount that the council member can choose to select health insurance. But I don't think that the city should have the burden of paying the full amount for a council member.
Okay. Additional comments? Councilmember Harris.
I would not want to vote in favor of the stipend. I believe that limits transparency and accountability. It is much simpler. It would, in fact, probably be a savings to the city if we simplified that process. But I do think that accountability has been an issue for us in the past, and I would like to see that we take the effort as a council to document our expenses. I don't think that's a burden, either for our credit cards or for our mileage. On the matter of health insurance, I put on my health hat. I believe everyone should be insured. I believe no one in our community should be without insurance, that health care is a right, and it hurts me when I see my neighbors that are having huge bills they can't afford, that they can't afford insurance. I don't want to see that in our city. My opinion is that whenever we can provide something like health insurance that benefits not only that individual, but the entire city, because if that individual is ill, if the mayor is ill and cannot get appropriate treatment, which could happen, or one of our other council members is ill, cannot get appropriate treatment, that is a problem for all of us in the management of the city. So I am inclined to vote for the insurance. If we take a look and decide that maybe that needs to be 50%, I don't know. But because it is slightly different from full-time employees. So, thank you.
Additional comments, Councilmember Tobias.
Okay, thank you. Since this agenda item was brought forward, the two questions that I have is, what would be the reasoning for us to override this charter? And can we justify the bypass of this charter? Because the charters for all cities and state and regulations are all placed for this reason, for transparency and for rules and regulations for governments to operate. There will be an opportunity for a compensation committee. I was on the one in 2019 when it was $200 and it got bumped up to $1,000. Looking at the different compensations and the different hours that we work and we put in for city council. It's not a right that I have to be up here. It's a privilege to be up here and serve. And I may be the old guy here, but I still have the mindset of free will and choice. This was my choice to run for city council. Nobody told me that I had to be forced to do this. It is my choice to stay up late hours to visit with residents, especially last night, 11 o'clock at night, receiving phone calls referencing item 22, being that I work and I'm up at 4 in the morning. But again, I wanted to understand the reasoning for the override, why we should be bypassing a voter-approved charter to get benefits going forward. And again, yes, I do receive the stipend and I do receive the salary. But there's one other thing that some of the residents may know or not know about. We also have credit cards that we use or that's also being used for us. Do we have the amount per month that is required or that is approved? Do you know how much that is? Because I still haven't activated mine yet this year. So what is it that we have on those credit cards?
Well, it's just our budget.
Yeah, it's within the budget, but we still have access to credit cards as well. So those are my questions. If anybody would like to answer why we should bypass the charter and justify the reasoning why we're trying to override to get the stipend. If there's anybody that could help me understand why we need to do that. If not, Mayor, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion
I still wanted
to deny and disapprove the ordinance amending the adopted budget and authorize the mayor and city council's insurance, and also to disapprove and deny the additional $300 per month for gas money, mileage reimbursement for mayor and city council.
All right, motion to deny made by Councilmember Tobias. Is there a second? All right, motion fails for lack of a second. Councilmember Zuniga.
So I thought we were all going to get an opportunity before you made the motion. That's why I didn't want to second that, Mr. Tobias. But I'd like to start by stating that as public officials, we must understand the concerns of all our residents, especially when it relates to total compensation. And we must demonstrate a high standard for our city, the staff, and fiscal responsibility. Whether there are valid reasons or invalid reasons is not the question that I feel we need to be asking. The question is whether this is the appropriate forum to discuss the council member compensation. It's my opinion, and only my opinion, that I should not be the decision maker on my council compensation. as I believe the charter has an established avenue for that. I also ask that we as council members follow the procedural rules in the charter and wait for a full compensation committee in 2025 to evaluate this. This doesn't mean that in the future, we will not have a greater need to adapt as a council because our city is obviously growing so fast. And at that point, there may be a need to include benefits for the various reasons, many that the mayor outlined. But I would prefer to wait and have our residents provide us that feedback in the compensation committee. And one question that I'd have also, I don't understand how it works financially, is if we did offer a 50% discount, because I also support that people should have affordable health care. If we did offer 50% discount and one council member needed to use the plan, but another council member does not accept the health insurance, how does this imbalance the council member budgets for every district? So I think that this is a question that needs to be figured out financially. And so I don't know if I have the dollar amount to make that decision up here. And those are my thoughts. So in this scenario, if one council member, we have a 50% discount, they take the health insurance, that's a cost increase, but another council member does not need the health insurance, so how do we balance the budget of every district council member?
All right, additional comments? Councilmember Heiser.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very interesting position to be in right now because I knew the risks of running for council and I knew what it meant to be a public servant and that my personality doesn't lend to doing things half-assed. Excuse my language, sorry. Pardon the expression. And so I got elected and I took my seat and realized that it's either 100% or 0%. And it took a dramatic effect on my business to the point where perhaps I was naive or just too optimistic that it would all find a way to work itself out. Being a public servant was something I always knew was in my future. You guys have heard me say this countless times from dating back to my junior year of high school. And I had waited for the right moment. I kept telling myself I needed to get my life into a certain order in order for me to be able to do it the right way, to be able to provide for my family while still serving the community. And I made that choice, and Councilmember Tobias, we all make choices in our lives. And so I sit here now, with this opportunity/decision in front of us, and think about the fact that I do not have health insurance, and health insurance is very expensive if you have to pay for it, as I'm sure some of you know, and some of you can sit and point the finger and say that you knew what you were getting yourself into, and I would say you're right, but I did it anyway, because serving is something I always knew that I wanted to do. So I think of what health insurance would mean for myself and my family and some of the other folks who are sitting up here on this dais. And it would mean a lot and make a big impact in, in a positive way. And I'm almost scared to go to the doctor because it's been too long. So there's that. But also that's living in fear is no way to live. Anyway, so I think y'all know where I stand. And Mayor, with that, I'd like to make a motion to approve option 2, which would be amend the ordinance to approve or to adjust the health insurance access for council members for the same opportunity as being a staff member,
And not the stipend.
not the stipend.
All right, motion is made by Councilmember Heiser that we approve agenda item number 22 by approving the insurance but denying the stipend. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Heiser, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Is there discussion on the motion? Councilmember Parsley.
So what would happen to the rest of council that will not be taken? I don't want anybody here to get sick and have no access to health care. Honestly, it's not my intention to do that. However, it does cost the city about $10,000 per year. I don't want to get that in cash if somebody else were to take it, but it will change the budget. And then it wouldn't be equitable for all of us, the benefits that we're getting. So I do understand that some people do put enough time in here that should be, maybe allowed. But I don't think that that's a position that we all have. I'm not gonna take it. I'm under my husband's health insurance. I don't know what everybody else is saying, but it's not something that is commonly made. And I don't think we are in that position. Again, this might be unpopular. I do believe you being the face of the city should get it. I don't know that the rest of council should have that opportunity. I mean, for the city to be taking money out of general fund to pay $10,000 for health insurance, because that would definitely unbalance the budget that every council member gets. It's not that I want that in cash, but it's just not something that, I think that should be a discussion that gets added once the compensation committee meets again.
Well, of the 21 council members I've served with, I think probably a third of them were uninsured. I've seen council members get up and quit. I've seen probably, 10 different council members or so express extreme frustration once they get into the job, because you don't know how hard it is. Yes, we are public servants. Yes, we are here for the benefit of the community. It is a selfless act, but at the same time, the burden is pretty substantial. We have lots of different types of people who are honored and as a result not properly compensated for the work, but at the same time there's still some amount. I don't think that it would be very much of a budgetary impact for us to allow for, of the third of the folks, that they could be insured just so that we could protect the group. But everyone has a right to their opinion. Every vote I've taken on council compensation's been split. It just is the way that it is. There's no win here. I understand folks get frustrated, but that's just, you got to vote the way you believe. And I've been pretty consistent on this since about 2019 when I started realizing how difficult this was. So anyway, any further discussion?
Yeah, just, I've been on the dais for a long time now, and, I can tell you right now, I'm not taking the insurance. I've got insurance, got a full-time job. I've got 3 full-time jobs, and that's what I do right now. I've heard a lot of crazy stuff up here on this dais. I remember the last compensation when the committee voted for 0, and we had a council member up at 500 and vote against it, already knowing she was going to get the 500. I seen a council member ask for clothes for the mayor because they were going to run for mayor. I mean, I've heard a lot of crazy things up here, and this is not one of those. I mean, it just doesn't seem that way. It's not something I'm going to take advantage of, but, you know, if we have people put in the time, I put in a lot of time, and the mayor's right. We have council members just show up for the council meeting, and that's it. I mean, they're not putting in the time. I've been a part of so many task force. I've been a part of so many projects and seen them to fruition. And it's great to be a council member and be a part of a project from day one to the last day. It's amazing. Sometimes you don't get that opportunity. That's all right. But if you started it, it's great. I mean, there's a lot of time we put in here. And pretty soon, I won't be on this dais because I won't be able to put in the full time that this dais will take more. We're 61,000 residents, no longer 5,000. We're 61,000 residents, 89% growth rate. Before long, we'll be at 100,000. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a dinosaur. I probably won't be here, you know? So it's going to be something that's how do we get quality council members here? And that's the important thing. The $300 stipend, it was about saving the city some money. You know, if it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. I mean, I'm still paying for my own gas. I don't turn in the receipts because I don't want to give the staff, which goes to the city secretary, and then over to the finance department who's working on budget season, more time. So I'll just pay for it out of pocket. I'll just do that. I'll continue to do that. It upsets me that there's so much misinformation out there. And I'm sorry to go off on this soapbox or even preach, but sometimes there's people in there that try to make things really bad when they're really not. And it's just something that, you know, in my heart, I jumped in here for service. I didn't put 30 years of serving in the community and then decide to run for council. My service in the community led me to council. And I didn't ask for anything. When I started here, I was making $100 a month. And that's before taxes. It's not the reason I ran for council. For people to say that we're here to make a living, to make extra money, it's not true. And like I tell you, I'm not going to take advantage of the insurance, but, you know, it'd be great to have in the future council members who can lead this city forward that are going to have to put in full time eventually when we grow to that city. This would probably just be laying the basis. It's probably not going to pass, but, you know, I just sometimes I get tired of the grandstanding. People coming up here and grandstanding because they're probably looking to run again. Honestly, I'm just fed up. Thank you.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Mayor, would you read the motion again?
The motion is to approve the insurance as proposed and to deny the $300 change in the stipend.
Tobias,
Nay.
Rizzo,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Parsley,
Nay.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Zuniga,
Nay.
Heiser.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries 4-3. All right. Next up is agenda item number 3, appointments. Consider approval of a minute order appointing Deborah Broderick to seat 6 of the Arts and Cultural Board. Ms. Schmeitz.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Amber Schmeitz, Assistant City Manager for the record. This is for consideration of appointment to seat 6 of the Arts and Cultural Board. This is for a term expiring on September 30th, 2024. We performed an interview, and the panel was made up of Mayor Pro Tem Rizzo, myself, and Kayla Sharp, and we determined that the applicant is a qualified candidate for the board. She is over 18 years of age, a resident of City of Kyle, and a business community representative for this particular seat. So she meets all those requirements. She's an active member of the community. She has connections to many artists and musicians, and she's passionate about arts and culture, and she's a former business owner with more than 20 years experience. So your options are to approve for the term expiring September 30th, 2024, or deny. We recommend approval.
All right. I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item 3.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Parsley, that we appoint Deborah Broderick to seat 6 of the Arts and Cultural Board. Is there discussion on that motion? Councilmember Parsley.
This makes me so excited. So I personally know Deborah. I have known her for several years now, and I cannot think of a better person to join the board. There are so many qualities that she has. She serves also for the Compassion Group in Plum Creek, so whenever anyone needs help, she's the first person that gets reached out to. She's the first person who offers help to any of the residents. She has an incredible background, so I am very excited. Cannot wait to see what the board is going to do with your addition to it.
All right, anyone else? Good luck. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, next up, agenda item number 4, consider approval of appointing Paul Hill for seat 4, the City of Kyle Ethics Commission. Ms. Harris.
Yes. It's my pleasure to, pardon me, to announce my appointment of Mr. Paul Hill to the Ethics Commission. Paul is a health policy attorney with the Texas Health and Human Services Department. He has served as a regional attorney for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services and assistant county attorneys in Travis and Houston counties. He is a resident of Kyle and has been very active in our community. Paul has demonstrated his knowledge of ethics, and I have watched him do that time after time over the last several years, and his leadership has been impeccable. So it's my pleasure to make the appointment of Mr. Paul Hill, and Mr. Hill is here. Would you like to step up and
I'd like to second that, Mayor. As she made the motion.
Well, I don't think it was quite the motion.
Oh, okay.
Haven't quite-
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
but we
okay.
got you.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the appointment of Paul Hill to the Ethics Commission.
I'd like to second that, and I'd like to follow up with, Paul's exceptional, a resident of Kyle. He's definitely a hard worker, engaged in the community, definitely does a lot, and has a true caring for serving. And I think he'd be a great addition, and we'll welcome him to the board.
All right. Motion by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem, that we appoint Paul Hill to the Ethics Board. Is there discussion on that motion?
I just want to say that there are a few people I know in this town who have higher ethics than Paul and more dedication to service than Paul. And the Ethics Board is lucky to have him.
Yeah, I'd like to also say, good to see you, Mr. Paul Hill. You know, and I had a conversation with you for 2 hours over that coffee, and man, you just have so much legal knowledge, so much experience, and I loved seeing how you will help in this position, in the ethics position that you're going to have.
Thank you.
I think Paul's all right. Did you suit up just to come here?
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yes,
gosh.
yes, sir.
Yeah, no, I second what has been said, Paul. It's an honor to have you on the board. Look forward to seeing you. Hopefully not have to take up too many items, but your service is appreciated. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
All right, next up is agenda item number 5, reports and presentations. Receive a report, hold discussion, provide staff direction regarding updating the Kyle's fee schedule in Appendix A of the City of Kyle Code of Ordinances.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Melissa McCullen, Chief Development Officer, and I have the privilege of discussing with you fees that are part of our fee schedule. Really took a look at development-related fees. I got my coworkers involved, and I even got Kyle Fire involved with kind of these discussions. So I'm excited to present this item before you to look at, honestly, raising and updating some of our fees associated with our fee schedule, and then this would be brought back before you for a future budget amendment. So again, when I came on board right after the new year, really kind of looking at the planning and inspections, kind of the development-related departments, looking at some of our fees and how we process applications. How can we better get to recover some of our costs, not only related to development fees, but continue to provide customer service, and really kind of seeing how those fees work in. You can see in several of your attachments, you saw that we really tried to benchmark our fees against our 10 kind of benchmark surrounding cities. As you saw, sometimes fees aren't always applied apples to apples. They're a little bit unique in how they get applied. So we did try to pull out some development projects to kind of show more of an apples-apples comparison that we'll show in the next couple slides. Again, fees are not just, or development projects are not just looked at by the planning department and building department. They really incorporate our GIS arm of the department. Engineering looks at it. Public Works touches every development application just about that comes before. Even our Parks Department looks at, parkland dedication and different projects that are coming before and improvements that are planned. And of course, no project is built without water and sewer availability. So quite important to that. And we have great partnerships with Kyle Fire too. They come to our pre-development meetings and our application meetings. They're a little bit more on the building side, but honestly, they look at our site development plans and kind of subdivision access and fire access too. So they really are a partner at the table. Again, these were the look at the 10 cities that we looked at benchmarking. You might have noticed that Austin fees are a little bit higher than the regional surrounding areas. They truly are an enterprise funded development review, meaning that truly the entire cost of recovery comes and supports the development review, where I would say the other cities, including us, obviously our development revenues do support our staff, but it's not 100% cost recovery. The general fund does support a lot of our development review as well. Again, really looked at initial focus for the planning and building fees, but we did work in some public works fees too. I try to also kind of clean up some of the use chart as well, or fee chart. There was a lot of duplication of fees, so try to cut down some of that. Usually fees are adopted as part of the budget process. We decided to pull this out and look at it a little bit early. I think it was honestly a good idea because we were able to concentrate on really looking at some of those fees more versus bundling it up with the budget process. It sometimes gets lost, I think, with that. We do have some fees that are applicable to inside the city and outside the city. With doing this analysis, I did realize that not all fees are necessarily applied that way. So with this, we will make sure that not only our permitting systems are updated and associated with that, but we have several people that intake the applications and fees and really kind of understand how these fees work with each application. And in general, the planning fees have not been updated for quite a few years here in Kyle. Since at least 2016, I think there was like some small tweaks maybe for inflation that might answer why we had some fees that were, $53.51. But really, the fees had not been analyzed for quite a while. In general, it looks like for fees, we would take a project in the very beginning and charge a fee for that, but it would submit several revisions in the meantime, and fees weren't always applied to the second through multiple revisions. Even without changes in fees, I would recommend that we would charge new fees for new applications that come in that we're revising and looking at a new application. Again, each new application that comes in have the same departments that are reviewing and looking at those applications. The current fees have reduced kind of the fractions and rounded out some of those fees, and also raised them in quite a few areas to look at supporting the cost of service. And I do think the new proposed fees are in line kind of with our benchmarks. I try to show that on the slides too that are coming up. And also Kyle Fire did share with us, we currently interact with them on a pass-through fee basis, meaning the application comes through us, they get charged that fee, and then we work with Kyle Fire to pay it off. So this was kind of an example project that we picked. It's the Dry River Run project. I really wanted to kind of focus on what's highlighted in blue up there on the slide. There was 19 individual kind of pad sites or buildings out on that plan. We had honestly 2 applications that were kind of submitted separately, Chick-fil-A, and then the rest were done overall with 1 site plan and then 10 revisions, meaning lots of changes kind of to the original site plan. I think total we took in $9,000 of fees for those multiple revisions and plans done for that. I would say under our new fee schedule that would be proposed, we would look at cost recovery a little bit more of $155,000 on that project, if this project would start now under the new development fees. Next kind of slides really kind of show what a site development would be, a drive-through restaurant with 54,000 square foot of impervious cover. What it would be in Kyle existing is the far left slide amount there. You can see what that site plan would have paid, what we're proposing those fees to be, which is the orange. So blue on the left is existing, orange is proposed, and then the next cities to the right are kind of some of our benchmark cities that we've had. And I went ahead and pulled kind of an average cost overall that you can see on the left-hand side there too. So Austin is the large green one for the same site plan. And again, as I mentioned, they are truly more of an enterprise cost recovery fund for their applications. Buda, and then Cedar Park, Georgetown.
Melissa, can you
Leander,
explain to the council what an enterprise fund is?
So an enterprise fund is really when you're looking at covering your entire costs of doing business. Water, wastewater departments are looked at being enterprise funds because they have water and sewer rates to truly cover the cost of all the infrastructure and everything related to that project. The next slide here is looking for an apartment or a multifamily site development. And again, this is kind of a planning engineering site development. We pulled a 7-acre site out with 243 square feet of impervious cover with about 260 units. Like, what would that cost across the board to get developed or looked at? This is kind of a fun graph. It's a split graph of we do preliminary plats, which are our initial round of subdivision review, where you look at the entire preliminary plat. Those are done by the red color, and then, or excuse me, blue color, and then final plat is kind of the right before you record it, after the infrastructure is built. Both of these get reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and this was a normal single-family subdivision at 70 lots at 17 acres. What that would cost for both those platting process. So you can kind of see the breakdown of those. Again, Kyle existing way on the left, and then what our proposed fees would be and what some of our surrounding cities do as well. This was kind of just a snapshot I took of a 6-month snapshot. So pretending we took all the exact same applications in with the new fees, what that could be. So this also includes parkland fees as well. So I do want to highlight that. That is a proposed fee that I am looking at in the park schedule. Our fees for that are quite low. As you know, the land cost and prices have increased quite a bit, as well as playground and amenity equipment. So I am proposing to raise park fees as well for residential development. But this is a snapshot, i.e. we took these fees in, we got $900,000 for. If we took this exact same 6 months worth of applications again, we'd look at like $1.6 million for it. Switching over to the building.
1 second, Councilmember Parsley.
I have a quick question, and I don't know if this may be related. I feel like a few months ago, we discussed the possibility of establishing a parkland dedication fee for commercial use. Did we ever look into anything like that?
For commercial?
Yes.
Yeah, we've looked into it. I think it's problematic to put a fee like that in. I don't have that information at my fingertips, but we did look at that and felt like it had some challenges because you don't necessarily have a need to put in parkland for commercial development, so there's not a need for the residents like you have with residential development. I think Austin had done some type of fee like that, but I'd need to go back and look at it. I think we felt like there were some issues with doing it here.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any idea, Melissa, why New Braunfels is 3X, 4X everyone else?
So it is interesting. I think New Braunfels, from my understanding, this was me meeting with the planning director there a couple of years ago, they don't do site developments as much. They do kind of all the site and building together, so they catch it on the building side. So that's another thing too. If you look at a life cycle of I could talk about this, sorry, for hours on my soapbox, but if you look at the life cycle of a project, it really starts with subdivision or planning, and then you go to site development, and then you do building permit. Some cities kind of work their fees to really kind of get it on or get, a little bit better recovery on the building permit side when they know the project's really going to be constructed versus having kind of lighter fees, at the beginning. When you look at a whole life cycle of a project, it's interesting to see kind of the whole range of what. But my understanding is New Braunfels doesn't do site developments as much. They do a lot in the building permit side. But this would be just the building side of that same drive-through restaurant. So you're looking at a 5,000 square foot drive-through restaurant building and what you would intake a building permit-wise side for this project. And then this would be for a multifamily building. So again, this would be a 320,000 square foot multifamily building. You're looking at 262 units and our existing and proposed versus some of the other surrounding cities on this too. So I would say if you had to, it's kind of funny, like Cedar Park, for example, I did have some tenure there before. When you look at single family homes, they're just not building single family homes anymore. So when you look at what their building fees were for that, they were probably pretty low, but what they are building is multifamily homes. So they've kind of chosen to concentrate maybe some of their cost recovery fees on where those inspections are going to. So every city has a little bit different life cycle too of kind of what they're constructing and doing as well. And then this last one is truly a single family residential house. So when you look at, we pulled out an average, 2,700 square foot home, and Kyle, what our existing and proposed fees are, and then again across the board. So again, I don't even think Austin is included on this one because they're not building a lot of single family homes either when you look at what some of the true standards are doing for that.
I bet you it would be much higher than everyone else's if they do.
It might, yeah.
I was at a policy event many years back, and they showed all the permit fees that the city of Austin, all the signatures required, and it was like a sheet. It went out over 4 people, and all the signatures. We had to hold it all the way. I mean, hundreds of signatures and sign-offs. So there's a balance there. Is all I'm saying.
Yep. So really, the proposed fees that I have before you this evening they are raised. They are looked to be more in line with some of our surrounding cities, get us closer to make sure we can do a little bit more cost recovery on that and to make sure that we're handling, when needed, our third-party reviews and inspections. Parkland fees are proposed to be raised in the budget as well. I would say at our I am not proposing changing our ratio of parkland per unit. That is something that I will look at with the code amendments that we're doing, but this is truly just looking at both the parkland dedication and the parkland improvement fees per unit if people choose to pay the fee in lieu for that. And I do think it aligns, it doesn't quite cover the cost of just the sheer amount of how expensive land is now, but it does get a little bit more closer to that gap. And then these fees aren't without looking at some of our public works and engineering fees too. We review a lot of standalone agreements, whether they're license agreements, license to encroach, additional hauling agreements. We didn't really have a fee associated with those before, so that was a new fee that I've added into this use chart as well. So you could see between all the underlines and everything else, just the sheer kind of cleanup I've tried to do with this Exhibit A, as well as introduce some fees in areas that we had gapped. And again, Kyle Fire did work with us, and we've included those fees into the schedule. So you really have 2 options. You can provide me any comments and then get back on raising the fees to support our general fund cuts, or we can, kick the can a little bit, wait to look at this with our our budget at our budget time like we normally do. You could also look at, which may be something we might want to do in the future too, is to truly look at doing a fee analysis to support, additional fees or changes in fees more. And then if you, again, Plan A, I kind of did that 6-month snapshot, and time showed that, or you can choose to wait. And again, those would be a future budget amendment item that I would bring back to you. And the pros of really looking at updating your fees is it does lessen some of the support on the general fund, so you could have some more money to utilize in other needed areas of our fast-growing city. It brings us more in line with some of our surrounding communities, and then has greater cost recovery. However, the cons is we're not as maybe development friendly with fees that we have been, and it is increasing the cost of development. And I do think most home builders or builders would say it would be a cost that they would carry down or pass down to the future home builders or future tenants. So with that, that really concludes my presentation. Staff does recommend, working on updating the fees and bringing that back before you for a budget amendment.
So when you say work in the fees, do you have a target you're trying to hit with these, or?
So I would say what's attached in your packet, like those changes, does represent kind of
Where you
what
wanna
these
go.
what I would be going for this.
And have you had any conversations with Home Builders Association
I have
or
not
any
yet,
of the
no.
development community about it?
No.
I think it's appropriate. I'm just curious if you've talked to them yet.
I have not.
We have not. I don't expect any of them will be excited about paying higher fees, but I think the fees, as we've shown you, they're in line with the other cities, the peer cities that we have in this area. So I don't think we're out of line in any of those. I think frankly, if we went and did a cost of service analysis, there's probably, the fees could be raised even higher. So I think this is a good balance for us to have, to still be development friendly. We're still encouraging good quality development, but making sure we get a good recovery of our cost that we have. And it's about $1.75 million per year to implement these fee changes that we have in additional revenue. So it's significant in our minds.
I'd like to make a comment.
Councilman Zuniga.
So, yeah, I'd like to thank you, Brian, for bringing this one so that we could review it. I'm actually very surprised that they haven't been raised in 2016. I know these are not impact fees, but they are costs where we have a lot of time in reviewing the plans. And those are just a few examples that you showed us. I'm sure that there was many more. And we were far below a lot of the other cities as we've been growing really fast the last 5-6 years. So the home builders are not here to tell us to raise them when we've been too low. So I wouldn't expect them to come here and tell us that they're too high. It cuts both ways. So I really like seeing this before the budget, that the fees are increased for development.
This is just for the water and wastewater.
No, this
No,
is
it's across the board.
for site plans
Okay.
and building permits.
Yeah, it's not the impact fees. It's
Correct.
just
It is
development
not.
services fees, essentially.
It's pretty much any fee besides
Okay.
impact
Yeah.
fees
Okay.
that you would be related to
Right.
development.
And if you think, oh, we're just going to be charging this to some publicly
that's the
traded
next one,
company,
sorry.
that's one thing. But when you got small businesses that are wanting, or people wanting to build on their lot or whatever, and they're, the fees, that's a direct cost. So,
I forgot to mention, there was, we did, and we do, as part of this fee schedule, have a $0 fee for modifications needed for ramps or any kind of accessibility issues. So that's now included in the fee chart as well. So if you're needing to do modifications to your home to handle construction of a wheelchair ramp or changing out your bathroom to handle some of that, there's now the removal of that cost associated with accessibility
why did you
issues.
choose to do that?
Well, the council asked us to. You brought forward an item.
You did the
a
work.
few
Not
weeks
what
ago.
you said. No, it's fine. But it was 6 ramps for the Texas Ramp Project because they were volunteering, not to say that we're going to do away if you want to put in an ADA ramp and have the means. It was you have to demonstrate financial need and you have to, I forget what it was, but it was for 6. It was not a policy change to no longer charge fees for ramps. It was, I don't remember this. Is that not the way it went?
No, I think.
Yeah,
we- I think
I
we
just want to
said-
clarify that is not
Okay.
what
That's-
my
if
intention was.
That was our understanding is that
That was
the
my
council
understanding
wanted
too.
to waive.
That we were just waiving all
That-
ramp and
They-
ADA fees?
At least for like
No, it-
residential.
We were making an exception
And
for
this is
the
for
Tex-
1 and 2 family residential, I
Yes.
will say too.
It was an exception for the Texas Ramps project so that they wouldn't have to pay fees because they were installing them for free. And the way they are paid, all the money for that nonprofit has to go into the construction. So they don't have even though they had the means to construct it, they did not have the means to pay for the fees. So it was 6 ramps in the city that action was taken. If you go back and watch, it'll be consistent with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We'll be glad to look at it and just clarify that. But I think there's typically not many of these that come through. It's
No.
just very few that come through, so it's.
So it's not going to affect the commercial side, right? Commercial.
No, this
builders
is
or-
only for
just a residential.
single family, 1 and 2 family residential.
Okay, and who would bear that cost? Would it be on the builder when they first build it, or are we talking about after the home is built and it's a resident? Because I'd be good with waiving the fees for a resident. I'm just not really good about
So-
waiving the fees for a builder.
I will say for consistency across applying things, that's what concerns me a little bit about focusing on one user that is doing a great service. There could be another user that does a great service, whether it be Habitat for Humanity or some other nonprofit, or that could also help provide some of that service that if we were super specific, might block their ability to help some of our residents in need. It was really geared towards single family, 1 and 2 family, single family residential, to put ramps in. And you're right, Councilman Rizzo, it'd probably be after the fact. It would be additions that they would need to change, to existing homes, probably to handle as people age in place for ADA accessibility.
Well, the motion was to exempt the Texas Ramp project from paying fees, that they still had to apply for permits. But that was the motion, not to just do away with fees for ADA and the like. So if y'all want to switch that up, I have to say that because that was not the action we took.
Because,
Councilor Tobias.
Because in that hindsight, you have to also be careful from a legal standpoint, because if we're saying we're going to waive fees for residential, the commercial developers can come back and say you're discriminating against us, correct? Could they come back and say that, even though it.
I will say anyone can complain at any time.
Anybody can complain at any time, but as
Yeah.
far as looking at the fees itself, you're choosing residential versus commercial, and so I wonder if somebody could challenge that, that's what I'm saying.
As Melissa said, anyone can challenge anything at any time. but
Sure,
there-
obviously, but
there are
that's
different-
why we gotta put protocols in place.
There are different approvals that are involved in reviewing commercial ramps that need to accommodate more people at a given time and more types of wheelchairs and that sort of thing than in a residential ramp. And so there is a logical basis for which to charge a different fee for commercial and residential, in my opinion.
And resident, and commercial is mandated, so, it's something that you have to do when you're building a building or putting up any
Exactly.
kind of large structure.
Oh,
You
yes.
have to follow all the guidelines. So it is totally different with residential. You don't have to put in a ramp or not put a ramp. It's up to the end user, but that's what I'm kind of leaning at towards the end user. I'd be okay with, maybe waiving fees for those that are looking to put up a ramp after the fact, once they've moved into a home. I just don't want to waive fees for builders, is what I don't want to do.
I agree with that.
That's my point.
I think we need to just leave the fees in there. We do all kinds of make decisions with regards to nonprofits and helping make their path through the city easy. We give cash to some nonprofits and not to others. The Texas Ramp Project was just, they literally requested that they not pay their fees because they wanted to go volunteer. They're a 501c3, but it's just a completely different discussion to say we're just going to not charge fees for permits on ADA, because like you say, there's 4, 5, 6 different examples of ways that could apply, and the majority of them we we should be charging the fee because there's administrative cost to that. And there are builders who do it and others, residents too, but
We can certainly leave it in. That we perhaps misunderstood the direction from council before. I don't think it's a substantial change to any of the numbers that we really showed. It's a handful, if that, per year. So
Right.
it's
I think we
it's
literally
really the
had
will of the
3
council
last
on
year.
this. How do you want to proceed?
But to say like if Habitat for Humanity wanted to come and do a ramp, it's like, well, we can, if they make a case, we can consider that. But there's the food bank that we give money to, or the Hayes Caldwell Women's Shelter, and there's other services that we don't give money to. So it's up to council discretion.
I think that's precisely why we would recommend just waiving a fee. It's a very small fee. There's just a few of these that come up. They're all probably difficult circumstances to some extent, and the fee is not substantial. So we would recommend, from our standpoint, of just not having that fee.
So bringing that up, could we just make it for nonprofits across the board, for a ramp, if they're installing a ramp for someone for free, that we could make it, no fee attached?
I'm not sure, the legal side of that, but it might be
Yeah.
better just to have, you either have a fee or you don't.
Okay.
Well, this is just for discussion, so before we
Yes.
go any further, why don't y'all look into it, maybe go back and review the discussion, and you can analyze it, and we can solve it later, if that's okay. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
we'll be glad to
small
do that.
amount.
And that will give us we'll have a chance to look at the details and then bring you an ordinance back on the second, provided you're comfortable with the approach on everything else.
Okay,
This,
all right. Any further discussion? You want us to actually vote to give you the option A or whatever? I'm pretty sure we're all good with it.
Great.
All right.
I think that's a good, and then if you had any other recommendations or changes.
Any other discussion? All right, thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
All right, next up is the consent agenda, items 6 through 15. Does anybody have any of these items they want to ask questions about or pull for in-depth discussion?
Number 6 and just 14, they're just quick questions.
All right, you want to just ask the questions, or do you want to pull them and take them separately?
Yeah, so the question on number 6 is, we did the impact study. Is this one a new study, new rate study for, I guess, the new water line, cost of service that our taxpayers may experience an impact on? Or what is this new cost of service and rate study on the water and wastewater?
So, Councilmember Zuniga, this is different than the impact fee studies that we talked about, which is for new development. This is to study the rate structures that we have for water and wastewater customers. So what you pay on your bill, what your charges are on a fixed rate basis and a volume basis for each meter size. We've never done a cost of service study on that, so it's important to know how much cost should be borne by each of those rate classes and what should the rates be. And so that's the purpose of this study, is to come back and then bring you that information. There will be rate changes that we'll recommend to you, but it'll be based on this study so that each customer class pays their proportional share of the cost.
Okay, now I remember us having that discussion.
A little different,
On the
yes, sir.
on the scale of the uses, okay.
Right.
And then number 14, Brian, just remind me again, you're getting the authority to sign some contracts for efficiency, but where would you find the need to just sign a contract where we might have better value than through the buyback program, I guess? Because isn't this what we're doing here?
This doesn't change the procurement policies, it's just changing the signatory on the contract. So we would still follow all procurement policies for all of our purchases, just like we do now. It would just authorize Brian to sign it so that we don't have to track down the mayor, basically. Because he's the one in the charter that signs. This allows Brian to sign it.
You're right, but in many of our agenda items, what we're purchasing comes in the agenda item. So we're kind of all aware of, this is a backhoe being purchased.
So it'll still go to you, if it's over $50,000, it'll still go to you for approval. It just authorizes Brian to sign it after city council approval. So that if, say, we have a lot of these where we might negotiate the terms of the final contract between the council meeting and signature, Brian can sign it after that time.
Speeds up on the back end.
The signature process, right?
The other thing I would say is it allows us to select an alternative procurement method. So the competitive seal proposal method, as an example, is something that don't have the authority to use right now. You'd still see that solicitation, and you would see the contract, and the award would come back to the council, but allows me to look at all the different procurement methods that are out there and try to make the best judgment on which one gives us the best value. So that allows
Thank you.
that to happen.
Thank you on that refresher. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right.
Any other discussions on those items or questions, motions?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items 6 through 15.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Zuniga, seconded by Councilmember Parsley, that we approve agenda items 6 through 15. Is there discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Next up is agenda item 16, consider approval of a resolution adopting the City of Kyle's legislative program.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about our legislative program, discuss and approve what we have before you. See if I can get this slide to go. Next slide. Anyone in the booth? Next slide. Thank you. The legislative program is a high-level document, a guide for the city that details not only communication at a high level for our council and staff, but also details strategies and legislative priorities laid out from this elected board as a whole. And it also talks about how we will deal with partnerships and strategic advocates for the city. So, for instance, this guide and project flyers that we built based on the legislative priorities of this guide have already been used when council has visited elected officials from the state, regional, and even federal level since we put this together. It's very helpful when it comes to showing this council as a board and its priorities and also the projects that we have going forward. And the partnerships that we will utilize as well. So, for instance, we have federal advocates, federal lobbyists that we use to build relationships and get into with agencies and federal elected officials. And as a part of this guide, it calls out also this city using state lobbyists as well for those partnerships and getting into those agencies at a state level and even a regional level. So. If this passes and it's the will of council, you'll see an RFP coming back from a state lobbyist level for council to approve. This is a dynamic document. I'll remind council that it's to be reviewed. It's not to be set on the shelf and let it collect dust, but that these priorities would be ones that you guys always look at and review so that they do reflect exactly what this elected board wants from a legislative program. And it helps enhance and guide major projects and initiatives that we have not only now, but also in the future. So we have our current road bond projects, for instance. We have a $25 million grant, raise grant for the 35 underpass that this legislative program has helped pull together and submit. We have the Creasy grant and the railroad crossing elimination on Kohlers. We have just under $3 million that has been secured and will start to draw down on Purple Pipe that we'll be utilizing for our water. In the future, we have water and wastewater needs. We have mental health programs that we will utilize this for to help build and get grant money for economic development. Vibe Trail Parks will work with the EPA and environmental projects, and the list will go on and on. So this will be a great project for the city, we believe. Oh, they gave me this. So the options are to approve the resolution as it stands, adopting the legislative program, to approve the resolution with any changes to the legislative program that you have before you, or to deny the resolution.
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments?
Presentation.
That's why I went to the bathroom. I was like, all right, I know I'm going to have plenty of time.
I'm getting better. I'll catch you one time.
Does anybody have any thoughts on the RFP for the state contract to start making those solicitations and taking a look at some of those firms?
I think it's a great idea, because we're looking at more dollars for infrastructure, we're looking for dollars for our parks. Honestly, we're not gonna be able to put this full burden on our taxpayers. We're gonna definitely need a way to reach out and get more of these dollars. I recently learned of some dollars for our parks that I'm gonna, hopefully, city staff can pursue, and gonna continue to go down that path, but I know we're gonna need help. It's not something we can do on our own. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with that. You know, I wanted us to do a state lobbyist as well as federal lobbyist back in 2017, the first time we started pursuing this. And we just took, for those who are still here, we just took a legislative trip to Washington, D.C. to attend a conference and to meet with our delegation. So that's Congressman Chip Roy and Senators Cruz and Congressman Kassar and Senator Cornyn's office. But we also met with the Federal Highway Administration. We met with Federal Railroad Administration, a lot of those federal organizations, and we talked to them about rail siding projects and 150 expansion and overpass funding. And across the board, they kept saying, you know, well, are you talking to the state? Because 90% of those dollars go to the state. And the federal representation, which is important, which has secured on about $400,000 in investment. We've secured about $3 million in grants. I think there's a potential for the state lobbyists to be able, or advocates to be able to help us potentially even more than that, because a lot of the money that's discretionary flows through the state. So I'm very much in favor of at least taking a look and talking to some folks to see what help they could provide us with working with TxDOT, Campo, and then also, you know, our you know, working on legislative bills, making sure that our voices are heard on the impact that some of these bills will make at the state level in particular, which are the most hostile towards cities, without a doubt. I think it's just across the board would be helpful. So I'm in support of it as well. It was just option A, is that what you said?
Just to approve the resolution, yes.
All right, motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Parsley. Is there discussion on the motion?
I just had a question for Jesse. Can we maybe get an analysis of what state money has come to our nearby cities? Because I think I recall San Marcos getting a lot of state money for a project. I don't know what the.
We can certainly look into it, yes.
Yeah, just like to see how are we doing? Are we falling
sure.
far behind state money?
Yeah, I know the competition out there is really tough. I mean, we're competing about other cities, and everybody's chasing these dollars. So we definitely need every advantage. We need to have that level playing field. So,
So I'd like to see that.
We can take a look at that. And I will see, staff is seeing a snowball effect, not only with the legislative priorities, but also with the relationships that council members are building with other elected officials. I mean, we really are seeing a lot more participation, and it's very helpful when we go for letters of support and submitting for these grants. So I think there's a lot of value in it.
The only example, Councilmember Zuniga, that I can give is, and it's really what started me wanting to do, is back in the Memorial Day floods, Halloween floods, 2015, when we just sustained a ton of damage. San Marcos also sustained a ton of damage, but I mean, our town flooded and there was a lot of damage. San Marcos received something like $25 million, and I think we received less than $1 million. And I went to them when we saw that, and I went to the mayor at the time, Mayor Tomaitis, and said, how did y'all get $25 million when there's no evidence, and at least from the way I see it, that you had more flooding damage than we did? And his response was, our state and federal lobby teams were on it. They knew all the processes that we needed to go through and had those relationships, and they just destroyed us in terms of the amount of money they could raise. And so that's where I started pursuing it. It did not work the first year I proposed it, but a few years later we were able to hire federal representation. So I think it's about investment. It's also about what we can do. So, you know, from the council members' standpoint of pressing staff and developing those relationships, but also staff's capability of using the legislative, organizations and lobby shops effectively to make sure that they're doing exactly what we want. And I think, Jesse, with you here in particular, that there's an opportunity for that. We've already seen an impact that you've made in that way. So if you're saying that you feel like you can use these programs and these organizations to help keep us moving forward in the right direction, I think we'd be foolish not to do it personally.
Appreciate it, Mayor, and absolutely.
And that's also an expectation, you know, so.
Yeah.
I just want to say for the record that even though he wasn't going through more slides, this counts against the time.
Yeah,
So
of course it does.
go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you should have said these things. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. We're sorry, Jesse, we love you. All right, next up, agenda item 17, first reading, consider approval of an ordinance granting a non-exclusive franchise to One Gas Incorporated for a period of 20 years for the transportation, distribution, and sale of gas and requiring payment of franchise fees. This item does have a public hearing. Mr. Schmeitz, if you want to present, then I will open the public hearing, then we'll open for questions.
Yes, thank you for remembering that. Amber Smythe, Assistant City Manager for the record. The current franchise agreement with Texas Gas Service, which is a division of One Gas, expires April 24th, 2024. So that's why we're bringing that to you tonight. Texas Gas did provide us with a notice of intent to renew on November 2023. This franchise agreement provides the ability for Texas Gas to occupy our rights of way, and they can transport, distribute, and sell natural gas. And then the franchise fees paid to the city are 4% of the gross receipts received by Texas Gas within our city limits. There's a 20-year term per requirement of the charter, so y'all can't go any longer than that. And then they have a very small service area customer base in the city of Kyle. So policy considerations for you. The city of Kyle also charges a fee to transport gas, which is a gas that is provided by someone other than the Texas Gas Service, but transported through their lines. There are two customers, Hayes CISD at Lehman High School and then Ascension Seton Hospital. Last year, of the $22,000 in franchise fees that we collected, we received about $4,200 for transport gas. The city council could choose not to charge the fee to transport gas. So options before you tonight are to approve the ordinance as presented, granting a non-exclusive franchise to One Gas for a period of 20 years for the transportation, distribution, and sale of gas and requiring payment of franchise fees. Or you could approve the ordinance with the removal of the transport fees, and then we would bring that back to y'all for a second reading and do not approve. And staff is recommending that y'all approve the ordinance granting the franchise with the removal of the transport fees. And we will bring that back to you on second reading.
All right, thank you, Ms. Schmeitz. This item does have a public hearing, so if there are no objections, I'm going to open the public hearing. Seeing none, the public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? All right, seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilman Zuniga.
Yes, again, on the fee thing, I don't know about removing a transport fee. I know it's a small increment, but it's not even about the amount. It's just like we're waiving fees for a enterprise. And then how does Texas Gas Service do in our city with their I guess when we need them to go check on gas leaks or gas calls, are they pretty responsive?
Yes.
To all the lines they have throughout the city? A lot of them are on 150, and I do see a lot of kind of crooked barriers with the yellow lines, I guess, are theirs. Is that Texas Gas Service?
I can tell you that they are responsive whenever we have a gas leak. They're right there on it, working on it. With regard to making the recommendation of the transport fee removal, we felt like the customers that were impacted, the school district and the hospital, seemed to be entities that we would want to support. And since the franchise fee was so small, that's why we were making that recommendation. Of course, that's up to council to decide. I do have Larry Graham here with Texas Gas. If you have any questions, I don't know if you can speak to the color of the lines and where they're at. The concern is where they're at, council
I guess
member?
like the maintenance of the capped lines, and I think that there's some spots that are probably the most dangerous spots. Are those checked up on regularly or on schedules?
Yeah, so good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Larry Graham with Texas Gas Service. So Texas Gas Service, just so you know, we have about 700,000 customers in Texas. We probably have 270,000 in the metro area. We're mainly in Travis County, and I would presume that CenterPoint has more of the customers in Kyle. And I think we have 477 customers. And our stuff, I believe, is east of 35, so the other part of town. So yeah, all of our lines are on either 2 or 3 year schedule where we go do something called a leak survey. And the system here is relatively new. I think at the oldest, it's 20 years old. That's when we got the franchise. So there is regular maintenance. If you have, in most of our stuff should be underground. And you're right, natural gas pipe, not just ours, but natural gas utilities use yellow. It's common for a 2 or 4 inch main that you would see in a residential street. But if you have a specific location that you have a question about, we'd be happy to send somebody out or to check into that. And
So do y'all have gas service through any subdivisions?
yeah, and I apologize. I know.
Because I know some homeowners aren't even aware of it, that they have a gas.
Well, like
line.
I said, I think you have a different utility that's mainly on the west side of 35. Is that 150? Like, I don't know the names of these, and
Correct.
I forget.
It looks like
So-
Amberwood, possibly.
Yeah.
Near Lehman High School, near the hospital. That's primary.
So we have 448 residential customers in Kyle, 28 commercial, 1 public authority, which would be the high school.
Okay.
And the question on the franchise fees for the transport, it's a policy decision for the council. You know, it doesn't affect us. I will say that most cities don't charge the franchise fee on the commodity that the transport customers get. And it can be a little bit confusing. They still pay franchise fee on the meter fees, but they're buying their gas from a third party. We're not part of that transaction. And so that's the deal. Most cities don't do that, but it's just a policy decision for the council.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion then to approve this agenda item.
Second, motion by Councilor Zuniga, seconded by the mayor, that we approve the ordinance as recommended by staff, granting the franchise, but also charging fee. Is there
Removal
discussion?
of the transport fee.
Is there any discussion on that
Yeah.
motion?
So what guarantees do we have that if we remove the fees, that they're going to drop the fees off the hospital or Lehman High School?
I believe that it's part of the original ordinance that says that they will charge those transport fees to those customers and then remit them back to the city. So that language would be removed from the ordinance.
Okay, so I want to find out who's going to be making sure that those fees are removed. I don't want them to, for someone to come back a year from now saying the hospital's still being charged for that and we're not getting those fees. I just want to make sure that we have follow through on this and we do away with these fees.
Sure, I can make sure I do my due diligence with Mr. Graham and make
Okay,
sure.
because sometimes when you remove fees, you never know if the consumer is getting that discount. That's my concern. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Is there any objection to this item being finally passed? All right, seeing none, the item is finally passed, which I can do, right, Jennifer, on this one? I'll take that as a yes. All right, next up is agenda item number 18, first reading. Consider approval of an ordinance approving conditional use permit for medical office use pursuant to the Calterra Capital Partners LLC development agreement for property located at 2220 Kohler's Crossing. This item has a public hearing. This is Ms. Sharp. Normally, we do not do conditional use permits at the council level, but this is something we negotiated into the Calterra development agreement, so we have a chance to review the plans. If you want to present, then I'll do the public hearing, and then we can open it for questions.
Sure. Kayla Sharp, City Planner for the record. So like Mayor said, this is not something that council usually sees. However, it is a requirement of the Calterra Development Agreement. Okay, so this is an application for a medical office use at 2200 Kohler's Crossing. They're wanting to construct an approximately 7,200 square feet building. And it is right at the corner of Kohler's Crossing and Kyle Crossing. This will work. Maybe. There we go. All right. All right, so the Planning and Zoning Commission considered the first conditional use permit for review of the materials for the I-35 overlay and approved that for a shell building back in January. This site is zoned retail services, which generally allows for medical office use. However, per the development agreement, this medical office use requires a conditional use permit, whereas otherwise would be allowed in the retail services zoning district. And section 2 of the development agreement outlines some criteria required for review and approval of uses identified. Okay. So this is a long list of criteria, and there are 2 slides of this, but generally it's just, is the use consistent with the comprehensive plan? Does it comply with requirements of the zoning ordinance? Are there adequate utilities and things like that? Is it going to negatively impact the surrounding properties? So, and then continuing on with the criteria, basically, does it create any adverse impacts on the adjoining properties? Is it appropriate size and scale? And then you'll notice the last one is whether the proposed use is overrepresented within or near to the community. So on the next one, I have a map showing the nearby medical offices. So this is within a half-mile buffer. So there are 3, New Spine Chiropractic, Carbon Health, and Aspen Dental. So next. Here are, just for your reference, the renderings. It met the 90% masonry requirement of the I-35 overlay that was previously approved by the City Council, or the Planning and Zoning Commission, sorry. And then next we should have the site plan. And then the next one is the landscape plan. And this has gone through the site development process and everything has been compliant with our requirements for that. These are more so just for your reference.
So on this plan right here, the tree up on top left, I had a little bit of concern. How close is it to the sidewalks into the roadway? I'm just worried about that tree growing roots sideways. I didn't know what kind of tree that was. I couldn't read it, it's too small.
Yeah, I can't read it from right here, but generally, if it's planted early enough, they're usually planted small enough that it's not.
I'm worried about when it grows. That's what my main concern is, because we have trees all over the city where sidewalks are going up, roadways are going up. Just making sure making sure their plantings are plantings that are gonna be sustainable for, as the tree grows and it's not uprooting our infrastructure.
Yes, sir. This was reviewed in the site development process, and so if there were any concerns, it would have been caught at that time. This has an approved site development permit, and we reviewed the landscape plans then.
Okay. Reviewed.
All right, this item does have a public hearing, so if there are no objections, I'm going to open up the public hearing now. Seeing none, public hearing is now open. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak? All right, seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Do you have any further questions for now?
I have a comment.
Councilmember Parsley.
Those elevations are really not eye-catching.
The what?
The elevations of the building.
So the elevations were already previously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission as part of that conditional use permit. This was a separate application, and it met the requirements of the I-35 overlay for materials and articulation and things like that. So outside of what's outlined in the I-35 overlay, per state law, we really don't have much control over it.
I'm sad that we don't
That's
have
what
any more
conditional use
control.
permits are. Every time
It
a
is
conditional use
just-
permit comes,
It's an
council wants to
eyes-
do something, and
It's
it
an
always comes back
eyesore.
to this. And it's always Danielle.
It's an eyesore. I'm
Because
sorry.
you want the standard, I get it.
Yeah, it's just, I feel that, I wish that, anything that even whenever we have a conditional use, the standards will be higher, that we could, dictate the type of standards that we have, because it's just a really ugly, plain building. That's all I have to say about that.
Councilmember Heiser.
Hey, Kayla, do you, outside of medical, do we know what that means in terms of who tenants can be? What types of medical?
I believe it will be a dentist office.
Another dentist office?
Another Taco Bell. Boy, it's history repeating itself. Go ahead. You may not have been here when that happened.
Is there any reason to grant this permit outside of the fact that
Being
they're
required
asking?
to. Outside of that.
So ultimately, it's up to the city council, but staff has found the request to be compliant with the criteria that was outlined in the development agreement. But ultimately, it's up to city council to decide.
And with that being said, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 18.
Second. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Mayor, that we approve agenda item number 18. Is there discussion
Yes, we
on
got some
the
over
motion? Look, conditional use permits are not where you can't do it. If you make bad arguments for denying conditional use permits, which we're not even talking about, the conditional use permit, aesthetics, architecture, things that aren't in the code, and if there's nothing not compliant in the code and you deny a conditional use permit, it's liability 101. Is that right, Amy?
Is that because that's why we had to?
This is not a development agreement. That's when the negotiations for standards are passed. And it's easy to, you can obviously criticize and say, oh, we should have made the development agreement stronger in this way or that, but that's where those negotiations have to take place. They're about to break ground. So that's what a conditional use permit is. Our job, and normally we don't even deal with it because it's below the city council. Our job is to make sure that it's compliant with the development agreement and it's compliant with the zoning, as Kayla said. And if it is, statutorily, which is exactly what she just said, we are required to approve. So, any further discussion?
Could we just, for the record, know what exactly would the ramifications would be? Was it a lawsuit, or can we just, so I know?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to get into the exact risks involved in any
We'd
particular
need to go into
decision,
exec if
especially
you wanna-
outside
if
of
you really wanna break
executive
that out.
session. But yes, lawsuits are always possible, if that was the question.
All right, any further discussion? Do we need to roll call vote this?
We cannot deny it, though.
No, we cannot. But, I mean, yes, we can. It's just, we're not being good stewards of the responsibilities we have if we do, because they were going to sue us. They have to. They wouldn't even have a choice. I mean, they've probably already got materials on order. That's what conditional use permits are. It's letting them start their project. It's not entitling their project or reviewing the architecture and those kind of things. All right.
So-
Or the use. Do we want another dentist office?
That's
That's grounds for a lawsuit.
Do we have, on the details on standards, it says the following specific uses are not deemed undesirable and developer consent to the requirements. They only be allowed by a conditional use permit. And so under those, we have medical offices. That's in the development agreement. So that's why they're asking for that conditional use permit, because otherwise they wouldn't be allowed.
Yes, that is technically what the agreement says, but the agreement also lists multiple criteria that we use to determine whether or not they are compliant for purposes of a conditional use permit, and staff has analyzed it and determined that they are. So staff's recommendation is to approve.
So even if the staff recommendation is to approve, they are still under the list of undesirable businesses. Wouldn't that be a point?
So that requires them to get the conditional use permits, which,
We
again,
can
they
deny.
have the list of criteria they have to comply with to get the conditional use permit. That's why we're here.
Is there a specific number of criteria that they have to meet in order for us to approve the conditional permit?
I can't tell you that. I don't know.
Can we table this item?
If the votes are there, I don't, it's the same thing. I'm never gonna agree to put at risk approving a conditional use permit because that's not where we make our negotiations. So it's not gonna end well. If we go back and say, well, we don't want you to have a dentist's office, they're coming with the dentist's office. They are 100% coming, and if we try to stop them, they will have no choice but to engage us legally, so. All right, I'm gonna just roll call vote.
Parsley,
Nay.
Zuniga,
Yes.
Tobias,
What?
Kaiser,
What was the last vote? It doesn't matter now?
You're on the clock to vote. We'll just keep moving.
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Rizzo.
Yeah, I want a lawsuit, yes.
Yeah. I don't want a lawsuit either.
All right, next up is agenda, motion carries 5-2. Next up is agenda item number 19, first reading, consider approval of an ordinance amending the landscaping code of chapter 54, City of Kyle Code of Ordinances. This item also has a public hearing. Mr. Atkinson.
Can I make a comment? You know what we should be known for?
What?
The dental
Dentist.
offices of Texas. Kyle is the city that has the most dental offices.
Supply and demand. We have the most kids too. So I take my kids to the dentist, and it's expensive, and I'm happy to
They're not
have more
coming if they
options.
don't do business.
That's right.
So,
It is expensive to take the kids to the dentist.
It's very expensive. That's right. All right. Mr. Atkinson, if you want to present.
Excellent. Will Atkinson, Director of Planning for the record. Before you, we have a council-directed landscape code. Back in, let me pull the screen here. We had a previous amendment that was approved on July 18th of 2023, and it really buttoned up a lot of our gaps in our landscape code to better facilitate xeriscaping and drought-resistant requirements for the city and encouraging further uses in that manner. It primarily focused on edits to the xeriscaping, allowing an increased percentage of synthetic turf, language of drought restrictions, also fence and screening requirements. Then on September 5th of last year, y'all asked for further amendments to tighten it up for drought and xeriscaping requirements and have the Planning and Zoning Commission to research programs to incentivize rainwater harvesting systems. So this is part one, phase one of two. We have the code amendment in front of you tonight. We are still doing research on the actual incentive programs to make the rest of this happen, and we'll bring that forward to y'all sometime in the next couple months, and with coordination with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So the landscape code amendments that we are proposing, we are adding a reference to the Austin Grow Green Guide for required plantings, which is native drought-resistant plantings. We're adding a specific reference to not allow St. Augustine grass that is not native and it is a water hog. We do not want that. There's other good sod requirements that they're just as well, and they're very drought resistant. Requiring xeriscaping in all zoning districts, requiring a greater mix of species, updating pruning allowances. There we go. Oop, not too far. There we go. Updating our tree trunk diameter for tree protection ordinances to make it more specific to the specific species of tree. Adding a specimen tree protection for juniper ashes, and that's for 25 inches and above on the trees to protect the golden cheek warbler, which is an endangered species, and the inclusion of oak wilt requirements. There we go.
What are the tree trunk requirements? What's your caliper?
Currently, it goes into 3 tiers. We have anything less than 12 inches. It's not considered a protected tree. 12 to 25, it is protected, but you have to get the planning department's permission to remove it, and largely have to replace that at a 1.5 to 1 ratio for inch removed. And then 25 plus.
1.5 trees or 1.5
inches
of diameter of trees?
Correct, removed. Specimen trees are 25 and above, and it's a 2 to 1 ratio replacement cost. But what we did with this proposed code amendment, we found a really good example in the Alamo Heights landscape code to where we made it more nuanced, because not all species of trees are the same. So we wanted to make sure it was better accounting for that.
Okay. What is the minimum caliper of tree that's required for new installation?
2 inches, and that's that's standard for most nurseries.
That's a lot better. It used to be 4, and the idea was we're valuing the size of a tree at installation, and that's no arborist will agree that that's the right way to handle it. The larger the caliper that you install, the worse the tree performs over time.
Correct. That's why the Arbor Day Foundation gives you saplings, because they have a much greater chance of establishing and lasting over time with drought conditions.
And if there's a situation where a developer has, or there's a project where one of those trees has to come out because there's no way to develop the site, and they're going, and maybe it's a large one or something like that, and there's no way to put that much small trees in, is there a variance process where they can demonstrate a hardship on that project?
Yes, sir. That's existing right now with the Planning and Zoning Commission. So generally, we try to, if they have to do, let's just say they have a 40-inch live oak that they need to replace for whatever reason. And we have to take it to the Planning and Zoning Commission to get that replaced, and they have to give their approval. And so they have to replace it at a 2 to 1 ratio. So that's 80 inches at 2 inches.
That's 40
so
trees.
40 trees.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm lingering on it, because there's going to be scenarios where that just is an absurd ratio.
Yes, but we have options with that. So generally, the way the code reads is currently you replace as many as you can on site in addition to the already required landscape code. The difference, you can either pay a fee in lieu of, which is $300 a caliper inch, or you can give those trees to the Parks Department to plant in city facilities. But either way, the Parks Department gets that money.
Okay. I think you're still going, aren't you? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. A few picture examples of what the proposed landscaping code will require, if you will. The 2 images on the left are examples of hill country landscapes. These are larger lots that you see for single-family residential. The 2 on the right are more predominant in probably the Blackland Prairie side of things. And then some examples of some standard single-family housing that we have in the area, for examples that people can replace their lawns with. And then the image on the right is Costco. So the Planning and Zoning Commission, when they saw this last week as the draft ordinance, they only had one recommendation to change. It was to include the areas underlined in blue in section 54-12 G6. They just wanted to tighten it up for the on-site landscape person for commercial properties, which to us that was fine. It's a non-substantive change, and the contractors have to be there anyway. So we recommend approving the code changes as presented with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation as well. Any questions?
Any questions for Mr.?
I do have a question. So I know we were talking, and you mentioned that a minute ago about the requiring a percentage of the landscaping to be like water conservation friendly, and that's the thing that we haven't determined if it's legal, correct?
So
or are we allowed to require a
we're
minimum?
requiring all of it to be xeriscaped.
Okay.
So with this proposed amendment. Now,
Perfect.
that does not mean that it's going to be all river rock and agave plants, right? So we have within this code amendment, we have a maximum of 25% of the xeriscaping can be river rock. So there's still going to be opportunity to have plenty of sod on the ground, but it has to be drought resistant, like buffalo grass or zoyosa or other similar Central Texas items. And then you still have to have your trees and shrubs as well.
All right, thank you so much. I'm happy to see this back to us. I would like to make a motion to approve item 19.
Second.
All right, motion by Councilmember Parsley, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem that we approve agenda item 19. Is there discussion on the motion? Have we had the public hearing? Did I have it? Did I open it and close it? We're going back to back to back, so I always lose which ones I did.
I don't
believe we did.
Let's go ahead and open it up.
All right, well, if there are no objections to the second and the motion, we're going to withdraw that motion. All right, the motion is withdrawn. I'm going to open the public hearing now. Is there anyone who wishes to come forward and speak on this item? Seeing none, public hearing is now closed. Councilmember Parsley.
Can I get a quick question in?
Oh, Councilmember Heiser, go ahead.
Will, you mentioned earlier that you were going to come back in a couple of months with the rebate program. Can we get like a more firm timeline on when that is? Because with the summer upcoming and knowing that we passed this a long time ago, the rebate program, and as it relates to water, could we just get a timeline on that?
I don't want to lie to you. I do not have a specific time frame in mind. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel, I will say that. So what I am doing research are local programs like Austin or San Antonio, ones that seem to be pretty well rounded and what have you. And if we can take those programs and incorporate them into our own, that would be the easiest process.
So like 6 weeks, 2 months? Like give me so I don't bother you about this again.
You can bother
until
me
that
about
moment.
It's not going to bother me if you do that.
Councilmember Heiser, we put an update in the weekly report a couple weeks, or it was not long after you had asked for an update on the rebate program.
Okay.
We are making some rebates, not many, but it's making a difference. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to send that out again.
Thank you.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Is there any objection to this item being finally passed? Any reason we need it coming back? All right, seeing none, the item is finally.
I don't think
Whoa,
we
hang
made
on.
a motion.
We don't, so we need to redo the motion. again.
Yes.
Yes.
Public hearings get me. We haven't had public hearings in forever, and now it's back to back
Councilmember
to
Parsley?
back. Yeah, go
So
ahead.
I would like to make a motion to approve item 19, including the amendments done by planning and zoning, the ones that are in blue.
Second.
Okay, motion to approve by Councilor Parsley, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem that we approve agenda item number 19 with P and Z amendments. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0 this time. Any objection to this item being finally passed? Seeing none, the item is finally passed. All right, next up is agenda item number 20. Consider approval of a resolution approving the policy and application for the Downtown Revitalization Grant Program. Ms. Vargas.
I'm here to present to you the policy and application for the Downtown Revitalization Grant.
Thank you. That was funded in this year's budget in the amount of $75,000, but I've put together the actual policy and application for applicants to apply. And the reason for the Downtown Revitalization Grant is intended to foster economic development and enhance the charm of our historic downtown area. As I mentioned before, $75,000 was funded in the budget, and our Economic Development and Tourism Board has reviewed it and made recommendations, and also our Planning Department reviewed it as well, just to be thorough and make sure we covered all the aspects.
We funded $75,000 in this year's budget?
Yes.
Was this the first time we've added money back into it, or has it been there?
Yes, for many years, yes. This was the very first time.
I don't remember any discussion about that, so go ahead.
We took the map that was in the downtown master plan as a guideline, and we feel that this was an appropriate square footage of downtown that covers several blocks that would make the most impact to downtown.
I would say, hang on, if we go back, just to give the feedback on that map, I don't see why we wouldn't want to extend it across the railroad tracks over the four-way auto and some of those businesses, because there's businesses there that are part of our gateway that if they applied, I'd be very inclined to want to help them.
Okay.
So I would, if it was me, I would at a minimum go to Old Highway 81, and maybe even down north and south on Old Highway 81, south in particular towards the Pisces, because Pisces is still downtown.
Is there
as far as
any
I'm
way
concerned.
that can be extended to the boundaries of the TERS?
Exactly.
Yeah. That's pretty simple. But the majority of the, like, Project Two-Step, it's a brand-new deal. That's,
Right.
they're not, it's the older businesses that would apply.
Yes, that's correct.
But does anybody have any objection to just changing the downtown map to be the downtown TERS map that we just approved?
No.
All right. Do you need a
Okay.
motion on that? And then you can keep going, but I'll just to do it while we got it.
I think at the end, I'll just ask if you want to approve it as presented or approve it with an amendment. So, and really, the rest of the slides are just outlining the, pardon me, the policy. You know, there's goals, the capital improvement overview, the map, the matching funds, the criteria, everything that's eligible and expenses. So it's everything that's permanent, that's not transferable. That includes lighting, facade upgrades, paint, anything that you can see from the street frontage that would enhance the buildings. So you do have the options to approve the application and policy or recommend changes.
Did we include it, the, like, you know, the issue we were having with another applicant, if they are not open for public, how can we handle somebody that wants to apply for the grant, but they are not?
I think that we left it in the application because we still feel that it enhances the downtown and it helps the neighbors, your neighboring businesses, and it might encourage some to actually open for business if they can make those enhancements. And it really is on a case-by-case basis. The Economic Development Board will review it, and then council still has the final approval. So I'll still bring back applicants to you, so if you can choose to deny on a case-by-case basis
Okay.
or approve.
The board will vote?
The board will as well.
Okay, so
Yes.
like a,
They'll bring back
like
a
a recommendation, the
Yes.
Economic Development Board voted. Okay, that's good. That's the way they used to do it, and it was helpful.
Okay.
Because these applications, it's good to apply and really look through them. Sometimes the applicants will show up to the Economic Development Board meetings and discuss.
Lead their case. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, they will.
it's good.
Yep, and it's for improvements that have not been done yet, so it's encouraging them to do it. And we will be promoting this heavily once it's approved, and we have a couple of applicants that have already expressed interest. And once we expand the boundaries, I think we'll have even more.
All right, does anybody have any more questions? I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 20 and amend the boundary map to be synced with the downtown TERS map. All right, motion by Mayor, second by Councilmember Parsley. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. All right, next up is agenda item number 21. Consider approval of task order number 6 to Lockwood, Andrews, and Newman for preliminary services and engineering design on the Windy Hill Road project of the 2022 road bond program, the amount of $830,345.20. Mr. Cantalupo.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm Joe Cantalupo. I work for K. Friesen Associates, and I am the Kyle Road Bond Program Manager. As the mayor said, we're here tonight to seek approval of task order number 4 for LAN for PS&E, Plan Specification and Estimates, which is the beginning of final design for the Windy Hill Road Bond project. And the amount is $830,345.20. As a reminder, this was part of the November 2022 bond program, and this project adds capacity on Windy Hill Road from I-35 to Purple Martin Avenue. And one of the, aside from taking out that curve on Windy Hill Road, one of the distinguishing features is that it includes a roundabout at Windy Hill and Cherrywood. The alignment and design features were approved by council this past January. The final schematic was also completed this past January. And this action would progress if approved. The design would progress to final design. We're noting that it's anticipated to bid in February of 2026 with August 2027 delivery. I will tell you that since we've submitted the slides for this, we've been able to back about 6 months off that schedule. And again, when we come back in April, we're intending on taking council through all the project schedules and the entire budgets. So again, this task order is for the development and completion of plans, specifications, and estimates for the Windy Hill Road project. And the fee, again, is $830,345.20. And what we're recommending is approving that task order number 4 for Lockwood, Andrews, and Newman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cantalupo. I'm checking for public hearing. I see none. I think we're done with that. Anybody have any questions or comments? Councilor Tobias.
All right, thank you. For a couple months now, I guess since we got Windy Hill reconstructed, I know that there's people from the Amberwood area and Indian Paintbrush have been having issues over there by Windy Hill. So if you could show us the map again.
Sure.
Are we looking at, again, 2 lanes going east and west, and then you're saying a roundabout at that area? And then that other road that leads to the back end, that's still going to stay the same? Will that be reconstructed as well, or is it just the new road?
I'm sorry.
Like you look at Windy Hill Road,
Right.
and then you have that one that's on the bottom there. I'm just wondering, the blue line, is it going to be, again, I can't remember if it's going to be 4 lanes, 2 lanes going both south?
Yes, yes.
And then the roundabout proposal is going to be
Which
there.
is Cherrywood, which is, if you're looking from the frontage road east, it's the first road you come to. It's under where the block says project limit. It would be under the M.
Okay,
in
'cause I
limit.
think that's where
Cherrywood.
it ends, is where we get a lot of the bottleneck and also the problems with the traffic backed up, because that also goes to people, residents to go to Shadow Glen. So how far, I know we're talking about this, but again, how far from the highway is the construction going all the way down to Windy Hill?
It goes just about to Purple Martin, which is at the end of the blue line, and that's the road that goes north from there. So
Okay.
that's those, more or less, that's the project limit.
And then the rest is county?
And then I don't exactly know if it's where the county picks up.
Okay.
But that's where the project, well, if you're coming west, at the beginning of the blue line, that's where the capacity increase comes. And also a little bit from removing the curve, even though, you know, that makes the capacity work better, and it makes the road safer and more efficient, in addition to the added lanes. But the project is not going past Purple Martin, which is where the blue line ends, on the right of the screen.
That's where all the backup starts, actually. That's where all the backup starts. That's,
I've been on it, and
yeah.
I'll never do it again until the project is
Yeah.
completed.
I know a lot of people complain about turning left on Cherrywood, both directions. Councilman Zuniga.
Hey, Joe, and maybe Brian. I just had a quick question. What is going to happen to the outdated Windy Hill Road part? Did we ever kind of come up with what we're going to do with that, the old piece?
So.
You got houses there, though.
Yes, that is, it's being discussed with the property owner, part of an exchange or swap, right? So that, the property, I guess on the south side where it says Windy Hill, that is under the same ownership as where the new road's gonna go. And so now that we're entering the PS&E phase, we'll be able to get survey done, and we'll be able to have another detailed conversation with the property owner to discuss the possibility of how those 2 pieces get that swapped. There's a lot of value, and we don't know the amount, and where the road's going over that property owner's property. But the property owner will also gain some value from us, or from the city rather, giving up existing Windy Hill Road. And so that is, you know, the intent is to work that out with the property owner. We've talked to them. They like the idea of the project. They want to be supportive of it, and they understand that there is going to be some sort of swap, you know, value for value. We just don't know what those numbers are yet. And it's, again, we're doing the homework, we're gathering the numbers and the survey. And then when we work it all out, that's really, I imagine it'll be brought to council for your approval.
Okay, I have to wait and see. Like I said, I think I don't know what's really going on with the swap or that old piece of the road, but.
Well, the intent is that the old piece of road will come under the ownership of the property owner, right? That is giving up the land for the new road.
Okay.
How the exact arrangements for that swap have yet to been worked out.
We would be dedicating that back to them.
Yeah.
For the roadway, that would become the property owners, as Joe said. And then we would be looking at purchasing the new piece going through. And that's the swap of what's the value for the existing road versus the cost to purchase the right-of-way for the new one. Those are the numbers we're trying to get together and then work through that particular transaction.
Maybe you can convert it into a toll road through there. I don't know. I mean, it just sounds kind of.
Totally.
But I understand. There's some value in it. Keep it, divide, build on it, something.
I'd like to comment that the really good news here is that the vast majority of the property needed for the relocation of Windy Hill Road is under the ownership of one property owner, which makes this a whole lot easier to go through. And the other bit of good news, which is better news, is that the property owner does see the value for them, honestly, and for the city in getting this done. So it should be a relatively productive conversation and issue to resolve.
Yeah, and anytime we can trade right-of-ways like this, it's a major savings.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir. Absolutely, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Joe.
Helps
Thank
us
you.
come in under budget.
That-
Or have extra monies to enhance lighting or sidewalks or those kind of things. Or add, 2 or 3 more roundabouts for Diane.
You see me aging?
Trust me, I hear about it, Travis.
I know, I can't help it. All right, any further discussion?
Any money that we can save, Joe, I'd love to see that at the end of this big old project.
All right, I motion to approve agenda item 21. Motion by Mayor, second by Councilmember Parsley, is that we approve the engineering for Windy Hills. There's discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Motion carries 7-0. All right, we're going to switch these last two. I'm going to go to 24 first. Consider approval of an amendment, task order number 2 with HDR Engineering in the amount of $596,972 for plans, specifications, estimates, bidding, contract administration for the realignment of FM 1626 transition main, a new well 4 chlorine building, supervisory control and data acquisition control system upgrades. Mr. Barba. So just to be clear, we're on 24, and then we'll go back to 23.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Leon Barba, City Engineer.
Good evening.
It's not moving. There he goes. Thank you. This project will expand the FM 1626 pump station to provide for increased drinking water supply capacity from the Alliance Regional Water Authority, also known as ARWA, pipeline to the city. Thank you. I'll probably elaborate a little bit on some of these items that I've listed here, but just to give you a little bit more background, probably something that you may not want to know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. On December 5th of 2017, we issued the first task order to HDR Engineering to start looking at the design of adding some storage to our facility there at 1626. And once they completed their preliminary engineering study, at that point, then we took them to the next phase, which was to actually design something there at that particular site. If you'll notice, on October 1st, 2018, we asked them to look at a 500,000-gallon storage tank. What we asked them to do was to match what we had there. Today, we have a 500,000-gallon storage tank there. And so we were just asking for them just to add another 500,000-gallon storage tank there at that similar site. Between 2018 and 2020, we discovered something that we didn't really anticipate, but our understanding that the ARWA take point was going to be at well site 4, which is La Verde, where the elevated storage tank is there. When we discovered that that was not the site that was desired, that changed our plans at that point. So then we had to figure out that the next place we could take the ARWA water would be at 1626. At that point, we asked HDR to look at what it would take to provide additional capacity at that particular site. On June 2nd of 2020, You can see where we added additional storage, and we also wanted to put a transmission line. So that's another thing that popped up and changed the scope of the work of the project. When they looked at their study to see what it would take for us to have the appropriate capacity there, they came up with 7 million gallons that we needed to store there at that particular site. Remember, we only had 500,000 there at the site. Of course, that triggered the need for more property and those kinds of things. Initially, we looked at a 1 million gallon tank. We decided to upsize it to 1 million gallon tank. Then later, we would add 3 million gallon tanks later in time as we needed them. But as we heard more information about ARWA and the plans for them to bring so much water to us, we changed our minds on the size. We just said, rather than having 4 tanks out there at one point in time, let's just go ahead and build a 3.5 million gallon tank this time, and then leave room for the second 3.5 million gallon storage tank. So that's where the project stands today. The project is about 90% complete on the 3.5 million gallon storage tank. We're ready to put that one out for construction. And again, I mentioned there's a transmission line there. That transmission main goes from 1626 up the east side of 1626 in front of ACC. And then the original plan that we had proposed to staff was to take it down, take a left there at Kohler's and go up to well site 4. That was the shortest route. We had actually saved that center median and had made sure that no utilities were in there. So when we went through there, we'd have a clear path for our transmission main. We were directed not to go that route. We were directed to take another route north of the PAC. There was no road at the time, and we would have to go down Burnham, go further north on the intersection of Kohler's and 1626, cut across that road that did not exist, and then go back down Burnham and then tie into well site 4. So we were given that direction, and that's the direction we gave the consultant to use to design his transmission line. About 3 or 4 months ago, WGI was the engineer that designed those roads that I think we're actually opening bids on 21st this week. We asked them about the 16-inch water line that we needed to put in that road. And immediately they had issues with not only the size of the line, it's a 16-inch water line, takes up a lot of space. They had a gas line, they had an existing 8-inch line, they had a wastewater line, they had electrical conduits, narrow right-of-way. And they were really struggling with how are they going to include that in that project. So guess what? We ended back on the first proposal. Let's take it back down Kohler's. That's why we're having to do the realignment on this project, is because now we're planning to take it back down Kohler's, and so we have to do the surveying and the design for that section to realign that section of 16-inch line that we need from the of 1626 site. That's the amendment that's before you tonight. And we also, just to add some more stuff, we are adding a new chlorine building and some SCADA control system upgrades to the site.
Can I ask you a question, Leon?
Yes, sir.
So your first path was clear. It looks like you had anticipated what was in the ground, and you were going to go in that fashion. But then it seems like you got direction to go along a different path. And now you encountered overcrowding of other utilities. So that didn't work out. So you went back to your original plan design.
That is correct.
Who's making those directions? Who's making that happen? That is now impacting costs and delays.
That's previous direction from a previous city manager.
Did they know that we would find more encumbrances by moving away from the original intent? Did they understand that there would be more encumbrances underground?
At that particular point in time, there was no road there. There was no design being done on that road at that particular time when that decision was made.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, as we were focused on getting the 1626 plant designed, time went on, and then WGI, the engineer, started working on their design plans for those roads. So actually, we were too late. And plus, but again, we had that issue with the 16-inch water line. It's too narrow right of way, and we didn't want to slow them down either. So that's why we decided let's just go ahead and go back to Plan A and put it down Kohler's Crossing. Again, it is a shorter route too. That's the other advantage that we liked, because it was a shorter route.
Right. Well, I guess I could see there was a lot of problematic steps that happened, but I'm glad that you had made the right call. the first time. It seems like we're back in the right path with the less things underground.
And of course, we don't like tearing up streets, but we're
Right.
gonna have to tear some of the streets in there and as we go down Colors. But we do have the roundabouts coming in that'll be covering a lot of that up anyway, so.
Wow. Well, it does work out, but it's a learning lesson, I guess.
Yes, sir.
But good to know what was happening through this time period. Sorry, didn't want to interrupt.
All right, any further discussion? Motion to approve? Yeah, I did.
Second.
Yeah. All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Zuniga, that we approve agenda item 24. Is there discussion on the motion?
I just wanted to ask how many chlorine buildings, sorry for too many questions. I'm a
You're
questioning
good.
guy.
No, you're good. You're good.
How many chlorine sites do we have? This is
I
number
don't know
4.
that. I would imagine we have one at each facility,
So
water
is it-
facilities.
So is it 4 chlorine? 5. Thank you. Just wanted to know that.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
All right, last item is agenda item 23. Consider approval of a resolution appointing Megan Brua to serve as the city's ethics compliance officer on a temporary basis pending issuance of a request for proposals based on the recommendation of the city attorney.
Good evening, Mayor and Councils. Amy Alcorn Reed, City Attorney for the record. So basically, I'm here because our ethics compliance officer has been forced to resign because he accepted an in-house position in another city.
You should flip that next time. Accepted a position that forced, and as a result, he
As
had
a result
to
of
resign.
that, he cannot
Forced to
serve.
resign. It's like,
I was
everybody's
gonna
like, what?
ask what
What
happened.
is he going to say?
But as a result of that, he can't serve
We
as
love you,
our,
Doug Montgomery.
as our ethics commission. He actually is in San Marcos, so if you guys are in there, you can say hi to him, but he's not able to serve our city any longer. So pursuant to the city code, I am required as a city attorney to nominate an ethics compliance officer. And so there's kind of a description of the code here. But basically, what I've noticed is that we haven't done a request for proposals for our ethics compliance officer since at least 2018, and I think it was before that, like significantly before that. I can't find records of them. So my suggestion is that we go ahead and do an RFP and see what's out there. But in the meantime, if an ethics question comes in or if there's a complaint, we need somebody that we can call. So Megan Brua is in the same office that Mr. Montgomery was in. He recommended that we use her. She's kind of a younger attorney, but she does have access to the rest of his firm. And so my recommendation is to appoint her for the time being and then revisit it after we.
Does anybody have any
do our
objections to that or comments? Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion by the mayor, seconded by Councilmember Parsley to approve agenda item 23. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries 7-0. Motion to keep going all night? All right, motion fails
I
for
don't
lack
wanna
of a
go home.
second. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we are adjourned.
Bye.